Hello and welcome to a bonus video of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. We beat the game last time. This time I'm going to show Fix Mode, which fittingly is unlocked after beating the game once. I had the option to do this for my playthrough of this game, but I decided not to. So after you beat the game once, any file that you start will have all of the bans, but I already showed those during the main game. What you also unlock is the ability to choose between either fixed or random. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to be doing this on easy. So random is the traditional growth method in Fire Emblem. If a character has a 50% strength growth, they have a 50% chance of gaining 1 point of strength when they level up. Fix mode, contrary to what it says, is a bit more complicated. It's not actually fixed, but the best analogy to it is effort values in the Pokemon games. Characters gain stat points on Fix mode as they gain experience, and when they level up, those stat points are converted into stat increases. Or, in more technical terms, anytime a character gains experience on Fix mode, both through battle, and that doesn't have to be killing something, and through bonus experience, the character gains a number of stat points to every stat equal to that experience multiplied by their growth rate in that stat. Just a fair warning, there will be math in this video, but it hopefully won't be too confusing. By multiplied by the growth rate, I mean the growth rate taken as a decimal. So, if you have a 50% growth, you multiply the experience by 0.5. So, if a character gains exactly 100 experience points, and they have a 50% growth in strength, they'll gain 50 strength points from that. Let's also say they have a 10% growth in magic, so from the same action, they get 10 magic points, and so on and so forth. Except not really, because there were two other things that influence stat points besides growth rates. The first comes from the weapon and the item the character has equipped. On Fix mode, every weapon in the game, along with some accessories, has a modifier to stat points associated with it. The Serenae's Forest website has a full list of these. To give one example, all iron weapons give a modifier of plus 5% to skill and speed, and minus 5% to strength and resistance. Now as for which equipable items give bonuses, most of them are pretty obvious. The majority of them are the bans, which happen to unlock at the same time Fix mode does, after beating the game at least once. In fact, it seems like bans were designed with Fix mode in mind. All of their stat alterations are the same as they are on random mode. So for example, the Archer ban will give plus 5% to skill and speed. There's also the Night Ward, which gives a massive 30% modifier to speed, but it only works on soldiers, cavaliers, and armor knights, and their respective promotions. The second modifier comes from the class of the enemy you're fighting. Naturally, this only applies when you gain experience from combat. If you're using bonus experience, this is treated as 0. Once again, Serenae's Forest has a full list of all the class modifiers, but to name one example, fighting a Myrmidon will give plus 5% to skill and luck, and minus 5% to HP and defense. Taking these into account, it's possible to slightly shape a character's stat growth by having them equip specific weapons and having them fight specific classes of enemies. But since all of these modifiers besides the Night Ward are very small, it usually doesn't have that much of an impact. Taking all that into account, here is the full formula for stat points gained. Experience times unit's growth rate plus equipped weapons alteration plus equipped items alteration plus enemy classes alteration. And this is all rounded to the nearest whole number. You might want to remember that detail because we can do something fun with that later. One other thing to remember is that every character starts with some stat points from the moment they join. This is likely to prevent their first level up from resulting in no stat gains. Now these starting stat points aren't always logical, they're unique to every character and are totally different from their actual growth rates. Once again, you can find a full list on Serenae's Forest, but some of them are very weird. For example, Ike starts with 50 points in magic. Okay, now we know how stat points are accumulated, but what do they actually do? Well, it's actually pretty simple. When a character levels up on Fix mode, the game checks which stats they've accumulated 100 or more stat points in. For each of these stats, 100 points are spent to give +1 to that stat on the level up, and any leftover points are kept for the next level up. Remember that unlike experience, stat points are not capped at 100. A character can easily end up with 150 or even more stat points before they level up, and that just means more are saved for the next one. Also, I'm not entirely sure about this because there actually isn't all that much documentation on how fixed mode works, but I'm guessing that if a character has 200 or more stat points in one stat before a level up, they'll get +2 to that stat and consume 200 points. This is only likely to happen for Lagoo's HP growths. Are you confused yet? I wouldn't blame you if you are. This whole process looks very complicated on paper. I find the best way to learn how fixed mode works is to learn by example, so I'm going to show you a run of the prologue, and every time Ike gains experience, I'll stop the video and give you a play-by-play of exactly how many stat points he's getting. Note that this is on easy mode, so Ike will level up twice during the prologue. This helps me illustrate my point much better. Okay, let's stop right there. Ike just hit Boyd and gained 16 experience. Here are Ike's growth rates for reference. In addition to that, we need to know Ike's equipped weapon modifier. Good news! The trainer sword gives no modifier at all, so we can ignore that part entirely. We also need to know the enemy's class modifier. Boyd is a fighter, and fighters modify the HP and strength growths by +5%, and the skill and luck growths by -5%. Doing the maths for every single stat, this 16 experience becomes 13 HP points, 9 strength points, 3 magic points, 7 skill points, 9 speed points, 5 luck points, 6 defense points, and 6 resistance points. These are added to Ike's starting stat points on fixed mode, which I'll be showing here. So after fighting Boyd, his stat points look like this. Ike's second attack is enough to defeat Boyd, and he gains 47 experience points. I'll spare you the calculations and just say that this is converted into 38 HP, 26 strength, 9 magic, 21 skill, 26 speed, 14 luck, 19 defense, and 19 resistance. And with that, Ike's total stat points look like this. You'll notice that Ike has now accumulated over 100 points in skill, locking in a +1 to skill on his next level up. Next in the prologue, Ike fights Grail. One hit is enough to give him 30 experience. Ike's equipped weapon is the same, but he's now fighting Grail, whose class is Hero, so we'll need to find a different set of class modifiers. As it turns out, Hero gives no modifiers at all, so for this fight, Ike's stat point gains are based purely on his natural growth rates, which is just what Grail would want. Skipping the calculations, Ike's stat points now look like this. But he still hasn't quite hit his first level up. One more hit on Grail and Ike finally does. He gains 30 experience points again. And these are his new stat points. Ike's about to level up for the first time, and the only stats that have above 100 points are HP, skill, and speed. Sure enough, I didn't screw up the calculations, thank goodness. With that, 100 points are spent in HP, skill, and speed, so Ike's stat points are now looking like this. Ike's next attack is enough to defeat Grail, and on easy mode, gives him enough experience to level up again. This much experience all at once means a lot of stat points are gained here. Ike's strength, luck, defense, and resistance points are now over 100, so you'd assume those stats will raise on his level up. Let's see if we're right. Yes, we were. Ike's stat points now sit here, and this process will repeat every time he levels up. So now I hope you understand how fixed mode works. Now, while stats on fixed mode aren't fixed in general, it does mean that if you do the exact same actions, you will always get the exact same level ups. So to prove it, I'm going to do Prologue Mercenaries again. So Ike's first level up should get him HP, skill and speed. And his second should get him strength, luck, defense, and resistance. So level ups in fixed mode are always predictable provided that you do the exact same sequence of actions and equip the exact same weapons. There is one more thing regarding fixed mode that I need to show though, and that requires me to play this file all the way up to chapter 8 because it requires bonus experience. So here we are at chapter 8's base, and I'm going to award bonus experience to Ike on fixed mode. Pay careful attention to his stat gains here. So I'm going to give him a full load of 100 bonus experience all at once. Notice how he did not gain strength or speed there. Okay, I'm going to reset now. And this time, I'm going to award Ike the same 100 bonus experience in increments of 1 experience point at a time. This is going to be painfully slow, so I'll spare you the torture and I'll speed this up. Okay, here we go, 1 more bonus experience. Now pay attention to this level up. I gained strength and speed this time. How did that happen? Well, remember when I said earlier that stat points are always rounded up to the nearest whole number? This method of gaining stats abuses that. So Ike's strength growth is exactly 50%. The formula for stat points is growth rate times experience. So, if you gave Ike 100 bonus experience, he would gain 50 stat points to strength, which is not enough to level it up, assuming he started with 0. But if you gave him increments of 1, that means each increment of 1 experience is giving him 0.5 stat points to strength. Now, because they're always rounded up to the nearest whole number, 0.5 is rounded up to 1. Meaning that the ratio of stat points to bonus experience goes from 1 to 2 to 1 to 1, effectively doubling Ike's strength growth. So, although it's really tedious, giving characters increments of 1 bonus experience at a time can drastically improve their stat growths on fixed mode. Any character who has at least a 50% growth in one stat can benefit from this, and bans can help this. So for example, if a character has a 45% growth in something, and you give them a ban that raises that, they'll have a 50% growth, so if you give them increments of 1 bonus experience at a time, they'll be guaranteed to get an increase to that stat. This method is known as bonus experience manipulation, or bonus experience abuse. It's technically possible with combat experience as well, but it's much easier to control bonus experience. You do need to be careful though, as like you saw with Ike's resistance there, some growth rates can end up lower than they normally are with certain increments of bonus experience. One final thing I need to talk about for fixed mode, Soth and his Blossom skill. The Blossom skill increases the rate at which stats increase on level ups, at the cost of giving the character only 2/3 of the normal experience they receive. Blossom obviously works differently on fixed mode as compared to random mode. On random, if a stat fails to increase, a second random number is rolled to give it another chance to increase. But on fixed mode, Blossom makes it so you only require 90 or more stat points to increase a stat on a level up rather than 100. This makes Soth's effective growths on fixed mode 1/9 higher than they normally are, which isn't all that much of an increase. Honestly, Soth gets a bigger benefit from Blossom on random mode. So if you're aiming to transfer Soth's stats to Radiant Dawn, maybe playing on fixed mode isn't a good idea. So that should be everything to do with fixed mode. It's a very interesting gameplay mechanic, and one that I'm surprised has never appeared in any other Fire Emblem game. I guess people thought it was a little too obscure, but I know a lot of people appreciate level ups being so much more predictable, and characters being much less susceptible to RNG screwage. In fact, speedruns of Path of Radiance, to most of my knowledge, always play on fixed mode, because it makes level ups predictable, consistent, and reliable to plan strategies around. I hope you found this video informative, and I hope to see you next time.